Welcome to the Health Guide podcast, where we share simple science-backed steps to stay strong and independent after 60. I'm Dr. Michael Klaper, and today we're talking about one of the most common and overlooked reasons. Your legs feel weaker with age. But first, let me tell you a quick story. A few months ago, I met a woman named Hiroko. She was 71, active, ate, well-walked daily. But she came to see me because she said, "I used to walk fast. Now I feel like my legs hesitate before I do." She hadn't had an accident. Nothing was broken, but something had changed. She avoided stairs, took shorter steps, and the longer she sat, the harder it was to stand. When we tested her, there was no injury, no inflammation, no disease. What she lacked was collagen. Not the kind you put in smoothies. The kind that holds your knees together, the type that cushions your ankles and keeps your hips moving without grinding. After 60, collagen production drops dramatically. And guess what? The first place you feel it is your legs. But here's the good news. You don't need injections. You don't need supplements that cost $80 a jar. You need the right vegetables, nature's way of telling your body, keep building. You're not done yet. And today I'm honored to explore this topic with someone I deeply admire. She began exercising at 65. She's now 93. She still trains daily, teaches movement classes, and inspires thousands across Japan to reclaim their mobility. She's not just a fitness instructor, she's a living symbol of what's possible after 60. Mrs. Takishima Mika, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dr. Klaper. It's a pleasure to be here. I tell people this all the time. I didn't start exercising because I was strong. I started because I was afraid of becoming invisible. At 65, my knees hurt. I couldn't rise from the floor without help. Every step felt heavier. So I started small. Just 5 minutes a day. Simple movements, gentle breath. And I paid close attention to what I ate, especially the plants that supported my joints. Now I'm 93. I don't just move, I trust my legs again. And I want others to feel that too. Collagen isn't about looking young. It's about staying upright, connected, alive.
That's exactly why this episode matters. Today we're diving into 5 vegetables that support your collagen naturally, without powders, without pills. We'll explain what they do, how to eat them, and why your legs are begging for them, especially after 60. Let's get started. Let's get into the science, but in the simplest way possible. Collagen isn't just a buzzword. It's the structural protein that holds our body together. It makes up your skin, your tendons, your cartilage, even the lining of your blood vessels. But here's the part most people don't know. There are over 28 types of collagen in the human body, and different types support different parts of you. For your legs, it's primarily type 1 and type 3 collagen. These forms help build tendons, ligaments, and muscle sheaths, which are essential for stability and movement. Now here's the problem. Starting around age 25, your body's collagen production slows. But after age 60, the slowdown becomes a steep drop. You lose both quantity and quality of collagen faster than you can rebuild it unless you intervene. And when collagen breaks down, you don't just see it in the mirror. You feel it in your joints. Your knees ache, your calves tighten, your hips lose their spring, and the simple act of walking becomes something you second-guess.
That's why I tell my students you don't feel old because of age. You feel old because the connection between your muscles and your bones gets weaker. They say I didn't fall. I just stopped walking as far. But what they really mean is I don't feel safe in my own legs. And that feeling, that hesitation, it's the first symptom of collagen loss. Not pain, not swelling, just doubt.
Exactly. And here's another layer. When your body senses instability, it responds by activating fear. You start to move less, sit more, Shrink your stride, avoid slopes, avoid chairs without arms. But every time you do that, you send a signal to your body, I don't need strong legs anymore. And the body listens. It down-regulates collagen production even more, and suddenly, you're stuck in a cycle. Less movement, less collagen, weaker legs, less movement.
Which is why we must interrupt the cycle, not with hard workouts, not with big changes, but with food, with rhythm, with small daily movement, and with vegetables that send the opposite message: keep building, keep connecting. I've seen it happen. A woman at 78 told me I started eating the vegetables you suggested. Within 3 weeks, I didn't need to grab the rail anymore. That's the power of giving your body the tools it recognizes.
Coming up next, we'll break down exactly which 5 vegetables support your collagen from the inside out, especially for the legs. We're not just talking theory here. We're talking results, real functional improvements you can feel. And it starts in your kitchen. 1. Red bell peppers. Let's start with red bell peppers. These are one of the richest natural sources of vitamin C, and without that, vitamin collagen simply cannot form. It's not optional. Vitamin C is the spark that activates the enzymes needed to assemble collagen chains. Just half a pepper gives you over 100% of your daily needs. Plus, red peppers contain capsanthin, a powerful antioxidant that protects the collagen you already have, especially in your knees and ankles, where oxidative stress builds up from years of use.
When I was younger, I didn't like the taste of peppers. Too strong, too raw. But now I slice them thin and add them to warm broth right before serving, not boiling. Just enough heat to soften them. They stay bright, and I swear when I eat them regularly, my knees don't creak as much in the morning. It's not dramatic, but it's noticeable. And at 93, that kind of improvement feels like a gift.
2. Spinach. Spinach has been with me since I was a girl, but I didn't understand how powerful it was until I became older. It contains vitamin K to help with bone mineralization, magnesium to relax tight muscles, and iron to support blood flow to the joints. When my students say their knees feel dry or stiff, I tell them that's your connective tissue asking for hydration and blood. Spinach brings both.
Exactly. And let's not forget lutein, a plant compound in spinach that reduces oxidative stress in joint tissues. When you combine spinach with a bit of lemon or red pepper, you enhance iron absorption, which helps the microcapillaries in your legs deliver nutrients where they're most needed. More blood flow to your knees. More repair signals. That's real medicine served on a plate.
3. Carrots. People think of carrots for vision, but I think of them for recovery. They're rich in beta-carotene, which converts into vitamin A, and that vitamin plays a key role in activating fibroblasts, the exact cells that synthesize collagen. Carrots also help reduce inflammation in the synovial membranes that line your joints, keeping movement smooth.
I never skip carrots. I eat one like an apple before my morning walk. They give me a light, even energy. But more than that, I notice that when I eat them consistently, I feel more upright, like my knees are moving under me instead of behind me. It's a small shift, but I feel it in every step.
4. Garlic. Now, garlic is special. It's not glamorous, but it's powerful, especially for older joints. I learned from a macrobiotic chef to crush garlic, let it sit 10 minutes, then cook gently. That process activates allicin and sulfur compounds, which protect existing collagen and support liver detox. And in traditional Japanese cooking, garlic is used to wake up the blood in winter.
Beautifully said. Garlic also contains taurine, which helps preserve elastin and collagen fibers during aging. It's like garlic doesn't just give you nutrients, it gives you a message: I'm still active. Keep repairing. And when combined with olive oil or lemon juice, its absorption improves. It's small, yes, But collagen doesn't need big things, it needs consistency.
5. Kale. Let's talk kale. This one gets a reputation as a trendy food, but it's ancient and incredibly relevant to collagen health. Kale delivers vitamin C, vitamin A, copper, and a host of polyphenols that reduce joint inflammation. It also contains glucosinolates, which help detoxify byproducts that can otherwise break down cartilage.
I didn't grow up eating kale, it's not a Japanese staple. But when I tried it in broth with tofu and shiitake, I realized it calms the joints. Not just feeds them, calms them. Now I add it to soup at least twice a week. My students say they feel less clicking in their hips. I always remind them kale doesn't perform miracles, but it keeps you moving toward one.
So there you have it, 5 vegetables, each one simple, each one powerful, but together they help you send a daily message to your legs, your joints, your collagen-producing cells. We're not done. Keep building. Coming up next, we'll show you how to combine these foods, when to eat them, what to pair them with, and how to build a meal that heals you from the ground up. Because food isn't just information, it's architecture. And your legs, they're still under construction. So we've talked about the 5 vegetables. Now let's talk about the how. Because eating them at the wrong time in the wrong way, or without proper pairings, means you might miss the benefits entirely. Collagen isn't just built with ingredients, it's built with strategy. Let's begin with timing.
Yes, many people think I ate vegetables today, I'm healthy. But when you eat them and what you eat with them really matters, especially after 60. I usually eat my collagen-supporting vegetables in the morning or at lunch, never at night. That's because your body's ability to absorb nutrients peaks earlier in the day, especially for vitamins like C and A. And digestion is stronger in the first half of the day. You want your body to use the food, not just process it.
Exactly. I always recommend pairing collagen-building vegetables with healthy fats, like olive oil, avocado, tahini, or even a handful of nuts. Why? Because vitamins A, K, and E are fat-soluble. They need fat to be absorbed. So if you're eating kale or spinach, drizzle olive oil. If you're roasting carrots, add some sesame or flaxseed. If you're blending red pepper into a smoothie, throw in a quarter avocado. It's not indulgence, it's intelligent nutrition.
I also remind people don't overcook the vegetables. Vitamin C is delicate. If you boil peppers for too long or steam spinach until it's mushy, you lose the magic. I do what I call light cooking with respect. Enough to warm the food, never enough to destroy its spirit.
I love that, cooking with respect. That's the difference between fuel and healing. And let's not forget pairing vegetables together. Spinach with red pepper, iron plus vitamin C. Carrots with garlic, vitamin A with sulfur compounds. Kale and lemon, as collagen-building minerals with acid for absorption. These pairings create a synergy, a conversation in the body that says, let's build something strong.
And I always remind my students, slow down when you eat. Chewing well activates enzymes in the saliva that begin digestion early. That means fewer stomach issues and better nutrient uptake. Sometimes just sitting down, breathing and chewing. That's enough to change how your body receives the food.
So if you're listening to this and thinking, do I need a new diet? The answer is no. You don't need more food. You need more awareness of how you eat what you already have. That's where healing begins. In our final part, we'll talk about results, what to expect if you do this daily, what changes you might feel, and what it means to say goodbye to weak legs, not just in theory, but in life. So what happens when you do this daily? When you eat with purpose, support your collagen, and treat your legs like they matter. Let me tell you what I've seen, what patients have told me, and what research confirms. Within the first 2 weeks, people notice they get up from chairs with more ease. By week 3, their knees don't crack as loudly, their balance improves, they feel less hesitant walking downhill. By the end of the first month, they say things like, "I didn't hold the railing today. I walked longer and didn't need to stop. My legs feel awake again."
Yes. And to me, it's not just the physical changes, it's the emotional ones. I see people come in scared of their bodies. They don't trust their steps. But after a few weeks of eating with intention, moving gently, listening to their knees and hips, they don't just walk taller, they smile more. Because they remember what strength feels like. It's not about running a marathon. It's about walking to the mailbox without fear, standing in the kitchen and not needing to lean. It's about living in your body again.
Exactly. You're not rebuilding like you're 20 again. You're reclaiming what's still there. The collagen, the strength, the balance they never left completely. They just needed a signal. And that signal is 5 minutes a day, a few vegetables on your plate, and a choice to stay present in your body.
No matter how old you are, your legs still remember how to be strong. You just have to remind them.
And your body is listening. So if this episode spoke to you, share it with someone who needs it. Try one vegetable this week, just one, and let your next step be a step forward. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time on the Health Guide podcast.